everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the Hawkins Do You Copy podcast. My name is Lauren.
And my name is Emily, and in this podcast we talk about all things Stranger Things.
Thank you to everybody that has been tuning in recently. We've noticed that we've been getting a few people come and check us out, which has been really cool. You can also now watch us on YouTube, which is Hawkins Do You Copy on YouTube, but we'll have all the links everywhere, and also on our Twitter and Instagram and also Facebook, which is at Hawkins Podcast, where we're going to be posting little teasers of upcoming episodes, which we've got a really exciting one for next week's episode all planned, which I'm really looking forward to.
We're excited already.
We're very excited already, and there'll be a little teaser for next week's on our Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, which will be really good. And also on there'll be lots of ways where you guys can get involved with the podcast and any questions that we might have or ways to contribute, which will be very exciting.
Usual, you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Stitcher we are now on, and we are now on Tuned In, I believe, as well. So you've got many different ways to listen and hear Stranger Things in your ears as much as you like.
And it really helps us out if you subscribe and follow us on those platforms. Even if, say, you've got Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but you prefer Spotify, what's the harm in giving us a cheeky follow on both? You know,
we're not going to complain.
There's no harm in that. So go and check out all those different platforms and give us a listen if you like Stranger Things.
Okay, so for this week and from this week on, we're going to introduce another little new concept, which is going to be a question of the week, which is a fun thing for us, fun thing for you, and more ways to get involved. So this week's question of the week is going to be, if you could have any powers, what would you have? What would you have, Lauren?
My brain, as a child, I always wanted to be able to read minds, but now that terrifies me because you know exactly what people are thinking, and I think sometimes I just don't want to know what people are thinking. So I think invisibility is like the pretty cool one. I mean, that would
I was thinking invisibility. I've just always liked the idea of, not that I would ever do, but you know, like the idea of that you can play little jokes and just be like, oh, what's this going on? And just,
it would just be good.
Get the mind reading one as well, or move. I've always wanted to move things.
Oh,
so I remember
like
when I was younger, kind of just sitting there being like, move, even though I know it would do nothing.
That scene in Matilda, the where she's like moving the things around. I just wanted to be able to do that. Sometimes I look at something and I'm like, if I concentrate enough, I will move this thing. And like, obviously not. No. But I think invisibility would be very handy. I mean, like, you just would never be bothered. You could just go invisible, go chill, do what you wanted, and it is, you know, you're fine. I like that concept.
So let us know what yours would be, but should we get on with the podcast?
Yes. So the reason why this week's question of the week is what power would you have is because this week's podcast is on the numbers. So the Hawkins lab test subjects, the people that were in the lab, and there are some that we know, some that we only know if we've read the additional content and the comic books and the other stuff. But basically, just a little overview. As I'm sure you guys know, they are the test subjects. It's very impersonal. Like, Brenner sort of and the people in the lab have taken any form of their identity away from them by just numbering them. Their names are gone. Who they are is gone. Who they were before. They are literally just given this number, which is really quite dehumanizing, really, just to subject someone to something so clinical, really. Like, they're still human beings and their identity has been taken away from them, which just shows that Brenner doesn't see them as people. He sees them as something something that he can use to get what he wants, which which is not great. He is not a nice man. No. So obviously we see sort of with 11, like she doesn't even know her real name. She doesn't know who she is.
No.
So the numbers are sort of a very impersonal, like, yeah.
So should we start at the beginning? I guess
It's a very good place to start.
Start right at the beginning. So we have, well, arguably we have number 1.
Yes.
Which we have touched on a little bit before. I think it might have been the first one we did, actually.
Yeah.
The first or second podcast,
yes.
We would have touched on this a bit. So canonically, we only really know Elle and Callie.
Yes.
But if we look outside of that, there's obviously the comic book series, which we will talk about a bit more in a second anyway. What's interesting, and obviously repeating ourselves from the first episodes, is that number 1 is one that is not allowed to be touched.
No.
At all.
So when they have been working on all the bonus content, so obviously there are a couple of novels now, there are a few comic book series, there was even things like Secret Cinema where there was some content that was touched on, but we're not going to go into that here, but it was something that was brought up. Number 1 was not allowed to be used. So anyone involved with any bonus content said they were told you can use this, and this, but you're not allowed to use number 1. So no one, aside from Matt and Ross Duffer, no.
Well,
which is very interesting.
Yeah, that was a really nice tie-in there. Well done with that. No one.
No one.
So yeah, that's obviously if we look into theories and stuff, there are some theories as to who it could be. I personally really like the idea that it could be. This is once again revealing myself as Full Buyers fan here.
Not even 10 minutes in.
No, we've already got it. But I really like the idea that somehow he's number 1. I don't know how they would do it, but I just really like that concept, because I think there's so many things about him that don't quite line up, and things have happened to him and are continuing to happen to him that we can't quite explain. Yeah.
So that is actually quite a big theory. There's lots riding on the possibility that he is a number and he is involved somehow. There is also the theory that the Demogorgon was number 1 and was a person that evolved into a Demogorgon and was number 1, and something happened somehow, which does then tie into why Brenner might want to make contact with the Demogorgon, because it was a person that he wants back. The one thing that I find really interesting, if I remember rightly from Suspicious Minds, is that Terry and the people that were involved, they didn't stay in the lab. They went in like for certain days and then would be allowed to leave. They weren't numbered.
No, they weren't actually, were they?
It's only the people that are in the lab that stay in the lab. So it's sort of like, if you have these powers, you're expected to be in the lab forever, technically. But if you're coming in to have these tests done, but you don't immediately show those powers and it's sort of trying to make you develop them, you're not numbered.
No.
Which is very interesting.
So that suggests that 1 is either something that has previous exists, because I think Callie is known as 8 at that point, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, Callie is known as 8 from the get-go.
Yeah, so number 1 is either already there and has been a thing that happened, or I guess Brenner's really bad at numbers.
He just forgot 1. But there's also the concept that 1 is Brenner. That is a theory. I don't think it's as fleshed out as the Will or Demogorgon theory, but that has been touched upon. And is there also a theory that it could be Sarah? Was that a theory that
I think I've seen little bits on it, because I think
Sarah Hopper.
Yeah, that stemmed a lot from, I think, though, that I think it was around the end of season 2 when they used the same shot as the hospital was in the lab, and I think people took that theory from that.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I
think that just had a lot to do with budget, not
watch her be revealed to be like the ultimate evil at the end of season 4 of
Sarah Hopper. Yeah. I feel like that is something that they should leave alone. But yeah, so there is a debate who is number one. I think the Duffer Brothers made the debate worse when everyone found out that number one was off limits.
Yeah,
that was what sort of made everyone be like, but who is it?
I mean, it certainly made me go like that.
Yeah, exactly. So the numbers that we do know, we have, and we will talk about these, we have number 3, number 6, number 8, number 9, and 9.5, and 11. That's all we know.
We should say as well, though, if you haven't read the comics, all the numbers apart from, obviously, 8 and 11 do come from that universe. So is it canon? Is it not canon? Because some things don't quite line up. So yeah, we're going to treat it for the sake of this, I think, as it's canon content.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's only so much you can talk about Callie.
Literally just 11 and Callie. Yeah. But also I think if it wasn't canon, there's a lot of information that would be wrong.
Yeah.
Like if they then make this in the show and then suddenly it's entirely different, it would be very weird.
Yeah.
So I want to say that we can probably assume that even if they're not mentioned, this is something which is, you know, but it's not officially confirmed as of yet. Yeah. If this is canon content.
Yeah. We will go with that though.
Yes.
So, obviously we've already spoken extensively about Elle. So we will only talk very, very briefly about her. You can listen to our other podcast about her, which is episode 11. I was really proud of that title. So listen to that one and you can hear more about us talk about her. But what we do know about her, just very briefly, is that Brenner obviously wanted her before she was even born. He could see the potential of her within Terry, which is a very weird thing.
Yeah.
And we were talking yesterday about how her powers, they're continuously evolving until they are tragically taken away at the end of season 3. But there's that build with them.
Yeah, and she's learning how to control them as well, I think, which, you know, she can feel that change because when she says like, oh, well, I can do this, she knows how far she can push herself. So I think she's learning what her powers can do. But she has been in the lab since she was born. She didn't know anything else. She's actually one of the only ones that we see, you know, with Callie and then also the comic book numbers she's like the only one that doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know any of her life before. She doesn't know what her real name is. And Brenner is Papa. And even though he tries that tactic on Callie and tries to sort of manipulate her the way he has done Elle, Callie doesn't call him Papa. Elle is the only one that calls him Papa, which is really, really interesting. And I think says a lot about her powers because he wants her there always.